Hello, welcome to the Agentuity week 46. It is very feature packed. We got all kinds of stuff for you. And I'll start us off. I've been reworking the GitHub app from scratch with Jeff and Robin and others. It's much simpler this time around. And V1, it's a lot easier to deploy. And here is a feature I was adding to our internal ops center that I'll show you at the end of this demo. And this is the comment that you'll get. So you'll get a comment with the Agentuity agent, and it'll give you a link to the project, a link to the deployment, and a preview link. This preview link is dead now because the branch has been merged. But let's hop over to the link here. And we can see this deployment. Robin's going to go into detail, but you can, he will show you a working version of that, but he'll go into more of the build and deployment logs. You have some nice PR information to get back to the PR here. No, that should not be that. Okay. Let's go back to the PR. Yeah, so we reworked the GitHub app to use our sandbox environments, which Jeff is going to go through and demo for you. And then I'll show you a little bit more about the feature I was adding to Ops Center here. So the feature I was actually adding was a feature to help us debug a lot of these issues with GitHub. So if you've ever seen the GitHub app webhook screen, it looks like this. And there's a bunch of information here that is not useful because most people, when they connect to GitHub app, they select all repos. And not all of your repos are going to be Agentuity repos. So we built this dashboard here so we can get some information and debug issues. So that is this app. And then the last thing I have been working on too is also GitHub related. So previously, when you wanted to connect the GitHub app, you'd have to do that all through the UI, and you couldn't have an agent help you with that. But now you have a bunch of GitHub commands to do this. So if you wanted to do OAuth, right, you can use the GitHub account subcommand. You do add, right? It's going to fetch your orgs. And then let's just use this, for example. I already have some GitHub accounts that I've connected to other organizations. So if I want to add them to my Bobby org, I can here. So I'm not going to add any. You would have use spacebar. So then it's going to kick off this OAuth process. You click this link and connect the GitHub app. And then you could also, those are the account commands, right? So there's also like remove and list and all the things that you'd expect. This guy. And then you can also just like list the repos, right? And you could link a repo to this project, right? Or you can get the status or unlink, right? So let's do Agentuity git status. So we can see it's linked to the Agentuity Ops Center repo. It's the main branch. We have preview deployments on. So that is the GitHub app thus far. More to come very soon. You should see it's disabled in your UI right now, but it will be enabled very soon. So over to Robin.
Yep. Sure. All right. So I've been doing, and by I mean me, Jeff, and Bobby have been doing a lot of work on getting this localized, getting the deployments better. We want to just give you so much look into stuff as you can get. So as you know, when you deploy, here I'll deploy, I have this little project called Fascia. I name all my demo stuff about woodworking. What? Oh, shoot, you guys can see this thing. So this is just a simple project. I'm just going to go ahead and deploy it, and I'll talk about it for a sec. So I'll just, and as it'll go and start the stuff. I'll put my things. And, you know, we have our streaming log that you get out here. I've demoed that like a few months back. Once it's done here, I'll show it. Come on. Yeah, there it is. Cool. That's my agent in real time, right? So I've got lovely clicky things to get in. I'm going to hop right into our deployment. If I can click it from my terminal, there we go. This thing really wants to be here. Get this out of here. And so I'm in here, just like what Bobby showed, all the information. We got our build logs now. So what are these? This is right from my terminal. I just saw this, right? And let's go back. Well, that's helpful, right? And it's cool is this is actually a forked process, right? And it's recording the output. So if you get panic or something, it'll show up here and you can just be like, hey, my thing's broken. Help me out, Agent Tutti. And we can. Another cool thing is this is the exact same thing we run in the GitHub app. So you'll get the same output here and there. And it's pretty helpful debugging. So this is setting up the project and uploading it and starting it. And the deployment log, this is what actually happened in the container. Like that's what we were seeing earlier over here. Now you have this in here. This is also accessible. It's really cool. And then what's this thing over here? Look at this new button. This is really cool. Boom. So as you know, you can SSH into Agent Tutti projects, but this new thing, which I think we'll get a little more look at later, is this is a web SSH terminal, right? So I can go in and some stuff. So something weird with my cursor here, but it's the same thing. It's just a web terminal for that. And in case you forgot, you can SSH into everything using SSH, and then like whatever entity, look, I'll just SSH with that. Boom! How helpful! My agent could perform this task for me. Get in. Come on, dude. Why is my upload so slow today? Huh? Weird. Okay. Well, that's the idea. I'll pass this off to Jeff.
Okay. God, I've been working on a lot of different things, but I guess the last week or two almost, I have been working on sandboxes. We just introduced sandbox support right before, well, during the beta that we just announced a few days ago. So that's live and in production. And I've been working on that. So I thought I would show a few things off with that. We've got a bunch of new exciting features coming out hopefully over the next few days, but what we have so far is pretty exciting actually, and get some great feedback. And we've been dog fooding ourselves on a lot of stuff as well. So you hide these aggressive, how do you hide all these aggressive little screens? Gosh, it really wants to show stuff, doesn't it? So as always in the command line, you now have a nifty sandbox command or set of commands, subcommand. And basically we have the concept, we have kind of three concepts. We have a run, which is kind of a one shot. I just want to run a command in a sandbox, get some output, which is really useful if you just want to run some sandbox code and kind of get the output from the code. Or we have kind of an interactive sandbox, which you can create a sandbox and you can execute commands against it, snapshot it, etc. And then eventually you can destroy it. And then we have snapshots, which are basically lightweight copies of sandboxes. So you can start a new sandbox from a snapshot, for example. And then we've got a bunch of commands around, file management, copying, things like that. So I will just start, the most basic demo is, let me just create a sandbox and just sort of show you, okay, so that we have a sandbox now. And if I ls this sandbox, I should see, let me just do status idle because I have a lot of sandboxes right now. So you can see I have a one sandbox I just created. I can get that details about that sandbox and just get that ID. You can see a bunch of information about that sandbox and all the rational defaults that we have here. And then I can run a command on that sandbox. So let me just do exec, and then you just type in commands like normal. So I'll just do a normal, whatever, ls-la/ for example. And then of course there's my sandbox, and then let's just curl Google. So curl Google, and that's going to fail. And it's going to fail because it can't resolve host because we didn't give it network access. So sandbox by default is secure. So let me just delete this sandbox and let's do another one that we can make it expose the network to it. So I'll just delete that sandbox. If I can delete delete sandbox. And now let's create another sandbox, but this time let's actually give it network access. There's a bunch of different commands, or a bunch of different config flags you can give it, like different size, memory, CPU, etc. But I'm just going to use the default right now because we have a new sandbox. This one has network access. So let's run that curl command again. Use the sandbox ID here. And then copy that guy. we should be able to now curl Google, and there it is. Okay, so that kind of works fine because we gave it network access. And then if I should be able to that's not the right command. Let me do this. Let me say cloud SSH, and then I should be able to, I'm now SSH'd into my sandbox, which is kind of useful. So let's just do something like, I don't know, console, hello world, whatever, and then, whatever, bun test, that's obvious. And then, I can, I can now, do whatever, bun, what I call it, test, I can now, run commands against it as you'd expect. And so that's kind of the command, that's kind of like the commands. There's a bunch more things you can download, upload, make directories, you can do all kinds of stuff, obviously, in your sandbox, push environment variables to your sandbox, etc. If I go to the UI, and then let's go down to services, there's this new sandbox tab. You can sort of see this sandbox that I just created. And what's nice is you can also, just from the UI here, you can also do all the things, most of the things, not all of the things, but most of the things that you saw in the CLI as well. So, I can, I call it test, run test. I think I called it test. I can do all that, from here as well. I've got a nice, file UI, so File Explorer, thanks to Rick and his amazing work. So you can upload and download files, folders, download the whole sandbox, etc. Delete, so you can do all the file management also from the UI as well as the CLI. And then we also have auditing. So we've done a bunch of auditing. So we found that to be really important, because if your agents are running things inside of sandboxes, you want to know exactly what your agents are doing. From an IT policy or, security standpoint, you've also got, pure audit logs. So if I look at, this, here's the command I run, here's the output, et cetera. So we've got a bunch of really nice things that we've done around that as well. So complete visibility into all your sandbox execution. And then, from here, I can create a snapshot. So let me just call this, whatever, V1. And now I have a snapshot. Snapshot is basically a lightweight copy of your sandbox along with your environment and any dependencies that you have. I didn't do any dependencies here, but you could do that. And now I've got a snapshot and I've tagged it V1. So if I go now to create a sandbox, I can create it from a tag. So I can create a new sandbox, but from this tag. I think I called it V1. And now I have a new sandbox, but it's from that tag or from that, from that sandbox. You can see it here. So it's pretty cool. And it just kind of, it's a lightweight copy effectively of that. So, and of course I can do all the things as we normally do, got a really nice CLI patterns. I can do SSH from the web. So I'm now in my copy. So if we run test, that's now in there. So I've made effectively a sandbox snapshot, and I can keep doing those snapshots, and we track all the lineage, all the history of all your different versions and sandbox snapshots, et cetera. So that's kind of that. And then the last thing I'll just show real quick, I believe I have a project. Let me just show the one demo. You can also do some pretty cool things. So I'm not going to run it real quick, but this is our default template. So if I go into my agent, for example, and this is just the default template that Parteek's going to demo a little bit here in a second, but also you now have, a new sandbox. You can also programmatically create them. So if I go here, you can sort of see I can create sandboxes from within my agent. And I can manage all my, so if I wanted to run secure code, let's say my agent wanted to run some sort of code or wanted to do something in a safe sandbox and it didn't want to leak, you can do that as well. You can do one-off executions as well as create lifecycle interactive sandboxes as well, which is really neat. And then the last part I'll show real quick. I need to open up the SDK for this example. So let me do that real quick. But if you go into, we have an example in our SDK, and I believe in our docs, but Parteek might correct me on that. But if we go into here, I believe somewhere I have in my apps testing sandbox, I have a little node project for testing. And you can see how you could use this sandbox just outside of our environment, outside of our runtime, just in a normal, node app or whatever. You know, I'm just creating my sandbox client. This will automatically inherit your keys, either your CLI key or your SDK key, or you can, you know, give it manually. You'll see there's some commands for giving it your key if you're in an environment where you pull your keys out some other way. But you can just sort of see I'm just creating a sandbox, getting some information, invoking some information. It's also got some nice things like I can, you know, process stood out or whatever in my pipes, stood in, stood out, stood error, all that's supported. You can chain them together, etc. So it's a simple example of going through and programmatically controlling your sandboxes as well using our SDK. So that's it with me. Rick, I believe is next.
Fancy pants. Really good, man. Love it. All right, let's do this. Share screen. Share screen. Yes, share. Boom, boom, boom. All right, see my screen? Good to go. All right, lots of things to demo. Since Jeff just did the sandbox, I'll just piggyback off that. So also in the VS Code extension, the Agent 2D VS Code extension, I added this sandbox panel here. So along with deploying this data and all that stuff. So now from here, you can, well, let me just create one. Create a sandbox, do a quick create, and it'll create one. There you go, boom. And then there's a sandbox that you can interact with from VS Code. And by the way, these are all in the command palette too. So of course you can say sandbox and you see all the different sandbox stuff here in the command palette. So anyway, from here, this is where, look, there's no files, but you can upload, you can create a new file. You can upload a file. Actually, let's just do that. Let's just do test. And then you notice it's like, it creates this temporary thing. It's like, say, console.log, hello world. And then I'll save it. I just saved it, right? And so you see how it saved it. So now that file is there. Ta-da! And I can go edit it and change it right in the sandbox. So it's really nice. You see all your sandboxes here. You can edit a file right there. And then you can also execute. So then you can say like run. What do I call this thing? Such a bad memory and stuff. Getting old, man. Run test. Yes, and so you can execute it, and just like what Jeff showed you, but you're kind of doing it all within VS Code, which is nice. All right, so that's there, super cool, right? From here, I can create a snapshot, just like Jeff did. I'll call it V1, like Jeff did. And so then that'll show up here with the snapshot. Of course, then I can create a sandbox from the snapshot. So you can manage all that there. You can see all your executions here as well. So I can, there's all the details. Actually, that does not stood out, does it? There we go. There's our hello world and the command we ran and all that. So you get the logs right in VS Code too. Cool, right? However, what if you have something like this? Like I've got, this is a project, or what's it called? The workspace in VS Code called VS Code extension. Well, if I want this stuff in my sandbox, so what I can do is I can say link sandbox to workspace, click on it, and I'll just call it hello. And then what it'll do is it'll link that sandbox to my workspace, and then I can just sync it. So then now anytime I click on it, now those files in my VS Code workspace are here. Hey, check that out. Sweet, right? And then I can create a snapshot. You can do whatever you want inside there. So pretty cool. What else can you do? Okay, yeah, you can set your variables. You can sync, like if you have an EMV file or something, that you can sync that to your sandbox by clicking on it. What else can we do? I'm trying to remember. Oh, let's do this. Create a sandbox and make a fizz ts in it and execute it. Let's see how well it does. Oh, you know what? I picked auto agent. Let's see what Copilot does here. All right, so see, it knows, the agent knows it can create a sandbox and do all the things. There you go. Allow. So it's going to do all the things. I don't know. How do I hide this sample? There we go. And sometimes this, look at that. I'm going to hide this and then watch if I drag it. Oh yeah, this is that region thing. We got to update. All right, this is the problem with that region thing. We'll get this fixed, but this is what would have happened. It would have executed it just like that, which is cool. So now it knows. So what it can do is the agent can execute it, read the output, and then keep iterating on it, even in your coding agent context, which is super cool. And that's it for that extension in VS Code. Lots of cool things you can do there. Okay, Next thing, let's talk about authentication. So we also added a first-class authentication feature in the SDK, and I'll show you that here in a minute, and in the web app via the database service that we offer. So you have first-class, Postgres database service. When you run Agent2D create, you can pick, hey, I want to use Agent2D auth. Or if you have an existing project, you can say Agent2D project auth init, and it'll set that up for you as well. When it does that, let me, where's my database? I have so many windows open. Here we go. Let's go. When it does that, what we do, again, this is a Postgres database, this is your database, but what we do is we use BetterAuth behind the scenes. We set all this up for you. So you get API keys, you get member organization management, user management, all out of the box. So as soon as you say, hey, I want to use Agent2D auth, this Postgres database gets set up for you. And then, by the way, this example app is in the SDK repo, so you can just jump over there and look at it and reference it. But then what happens is your app now has this package, Agent2D auth. And so this is the API folder. So I'm talking about my HANA routes in this case. And here you can drop in your auth middleware. You don't have to set up anything. It just magically works, sets it up, and then you can pull out data from it. So like here's this auth middleware here. And then you'll see here on the context, you can get the user. You can also get the organization. You can get the API key. You can get a bunch of stuff. You can see here's another user getting the name, getting the email address. Here's another example of getting the organization and just spitting it out. And then let me scroll down to API key. Here you go. That's the other one, is you can get the API key out, which is pretty handy too. So we give you a bunch of stuff on top of this in the context. So I can say auth dot API dot, and then remove member, reject member, reset password, refresh token, list user invitations, all this stuff based on the plugins that we enable for you by default. Pretty cool. Sign in with social, a bunch of stuff. And since it's BetterAuth, by the way, you can add to the configuration any BetterAuth plugin you want to use. SSO, SAML, Google. Actually, they even have crypto stuff too. So it's pretty neat. But then what happens is, you'll notice, let me see up here, I call an agent somewhere in this example. Yeah, here. So here I'm calling an agent. And I'm not having to, in the agent input, define, hey, I accept a user, or I accept user information. What we do is we pass the context of the auth, if it exists, to your agents. So then what you can do is this. You see the CTX auth here? So now you can, without having to deal with agent setup with like input, output, and we just magically wire this up for you. And then these things are here as well in your agent. So what's great about that is you can imagine an agent that does tool calling and some things like that. You can expose this to the user or to the agent, and it uses those data, user data, with it. You can also impersonate the user, by the way, too. So you actually have the agent impersonate the user, which is where we're going to go with some of this authentication stuff. Back to Agent2D vision. What does an agent need to be successful? What are the things that it needs? An agent first authentication. An agent needs a user. It needs to be a user in your database, and also probably needs to impersonate. So there's audit logs and all sorts of stuff we can track. Anyway, so we give you that for free. But then what's cool is you notice down here, I call another agent from this agent. So it propagates. So if I go to this agent, like again, we're not passing down the auth stuff. This agent also has access to it as well. So then you don't have to set anything up. It just works. Pretty easy. And then on the website, if I go here, again, let me just show you the client. This is basically BetterAuth. In this case, I use the last login method client BetterAuth plugin, but you can use whatever you want. But if I go down here, it's the same, like what you would expect. You've got hooks for, well, there's this auth client get use, last use login method, which is very handy, by the way. And then there's use API, there's use auth hooks. So we give you all that as well. So it's like first class authentication based on BetterAuth, which is a great open source library. And we're going to do lots of really cool stuff with as well. All right, and then let's see, one other demo is web analytics. So Jeff earlier this week added a analytics beacon so if you have a front end part of your project, then we'll add that analytics beacon for you, and then we track all this data for you. And then you also get custom events, and you can track clicks and a bunch of stuff. You get performance. You notice down here we've got the load time, FCP, LCP, first contemporary paint and all that. So we do that, and then let me show you the custom events. So I click on custom events, same thing. So you can see there's over time. This is our default template, which I think Matt is going to demo in a minute. So by language, like this is the default template does like this translation. Translate this for me. And so you can see like the custom event of the translate here by model. So you can get all the different dimensions for your event and show it there. And then of course you can see all the recent events. You can filter by a property, which is very useful. You can click on it, get more information, which is pretty cool. So custom events are a big deal to me. So I'm excited we have that. And then continue to work on it, but we got geo stuff too, so you can view visitors by location too. You can tell where I live.
That looks like Florida.
Don't swat me.
Rick doxing himself.
Yeah, exactly. Don't dox me, man. Yep, exactly. So anyway, super cool addition. Love it. And that is, I've got it on a PR. We're just reviewing it right now, so it should be live by the end of the day. And that's it for me. Pass it off to you, Matt.
All right. So before I dive into the larger thing, just wanted to update everyone. I think it was the last demo day I said that we'll start to integrate eval information more throughout the rest of the web app. And so I've done some work towards that. As always, this is my local test scenario. So I've got a bunch of really bad, terrible data in here just to kind of show things off. But when you're on the dashboard now, you'll see we actually have your eval pass rate for all of your different projects and agents that are running. That's one place we're surfacing it now. If you dive into a project, we're going to surface it alongside your sessions now as well. So you can see both of them side by side. And then we've also updated the eval screen. Before you had to sort of pick which deployment you wanted to look at evals for, which it is probably what you want most of the time, right? You want to know how the current code that's out there live in production is performing and what the eval pass rate is for that. But it also might be helpful to see what some past evals were. So the stats all up top and the table at the bottom are still sort of locked to your current deployment. That way we can get a nice number of, what is your current pass rate, what is your many failures, et cetera. But one thing we did add is now you can see here we've got past eval pass rates from older deployments. So you can actually go back and see sort of the trend over time of what your evals are doing and if they're getting better or worse or whatever else. So just one little thing to make that easier. So the next thing I want to show off is the default template that we have now. So I'm going to do agent activity, create, do it my local team. I have to use this format because I have so many of these test files now. All right, so we're just going to skip all this stuff for now. All right, so we got our project up and running. We're going to CD into that, and we'll open her up. All right, so most of this should look familiar at this point. If you've watched any of our demo videos, you understand sort of how things are organized. But what we've done is we have come up with a new default template instead of a really simple one that just spits back hello world or something like that. We wanted to show something that was a bit more representative of what it is you're actually going to be developing with this. So I'm going to run it real quick over here. We can sort of look at the code and the finished project or finished product side by side. All right, there we go. Alluded to it a couple times already throughout the earlier demos today, but yeah, it's a translation agent. So translate to Spanish using GPT-5 Nano. Obviously, these are selects. You can pick some different ones. But you paste some text in here, you hit translate, and lately GPT-5 has been incredibly slow. But eventually it'll come back and it'll actually give you the translated text for this. So there we go. And the cool thing is it's also going to give you a little bit of information. It's going to show you the thread ID and the session ID. It's going to educate you a little bit about the difference between threads and sessions and how they're useful. It's going to show you your recent translations. Again, it's going to show you some metadata about those. And it's going to give you the next steps, which we've had for a while now. But yeah, if we dive into this a little bit, we've got our translate agent. Like I said, we kind of want it to be more representative of what it is you're actually going to be doing. So, we're actually pulling in some more stuff, actually pulling in LLM calls and things like that. But, you got a bunch of type definitions up top using the schema that we've got, creating the agent, going through, creating the handler, and there's a bunch of really good stuff in here. So again, this is showing off utilizing threads, showing the chat completion, which I think we're all kind of used to at this point. And it's also pushing custom information onto that thread, which is what gives you this history over here. So showing you a lot of good contextual information. We also now are shipping a eval with this by default. It's actually 2 evals, and it's showing 2 different ways of doing this. So we talked about this before, but we now have a sort of a pre-done, a prepackaged set of evals that are available. There's like 10 or 12 of them. So we're showing off how that works, how you can call this prepackaged adversarial eval, including with the middleware, which is really cool. So you can transform the input and transform the output a little bit before the eval runs. And then we've got this custom eval, again, showing you how this all works. This one is making sure that the language matches. So, you requested Spanish is what you get back actually Spanish. Obviously, it's kind of simple, but again, this is just showing you the capabilities that are available to you. So we've also, in the APIs, we've got a couple of routes. You've got the, obviously, calling the agent route, which we had before, but the other nice thing that we have now is we have this ability to call these APIs and go grab history information. Again, this is for these recent translations, and it shows you how you can do a get and a delete and access your threads through the context, etc. So a lot more powerful example, I think. And then finally, so you've got your front end index is pretty much the same. Front end TSX is pretty much the same. If you come into the app.tsx, this is where it starts to get a little bit different than what we had before. Obviously, again, you're sitting here and you're doing things like using the API that I just showed off a second ago to get the history and the results and everything else, and spitting those out. The other nice thing is this is using Tailwind now as the default template. It's probably the most common thing that we see people doing, so we went ahead and included it by default because it is a little bit finicky to set up with buttons sometimes. So it just sort of works out of the box for you now. So one other thing we'll do is, let's see here. I'm gonna kill this process. I'll go ahead and pop this up. And if I go back now in here, we should have our project that we just created is in here now. And so one new thing, I don't think we've shown this off yet. Obviously, we've shown off workbench a number of times, but the thing that we have now is we actually have workbench enabled on the project screen. So you can come in here and hopefully, yeah, there we go. So you can actually connect through the web app now to your local instance of this this translate agent. You can see the schema. You can do, the pre-fill with mock data, et cetera. The thing that we're going to be working on next for Workbench in the app is actually getting this to be able to hit your production agent as well. So you can actually send requests and get responses from that. So that's coming soon. And that is it for me. And so we'll go over to Parteek.
Yep. Thank you, Matt. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so a couple of updates. Firstly, with the docs. So we've now updated the docs to be on agent30.dev. So we moved over all of the V1 docs over here. But as you can see, it's sort of the same idea, right? It's more of a code focus, code first set of documentation. So everything that we had in the preview is now live on agent2d.dev. So you get all that fun stuff that you had before, including a few new services like the sandbox stuff that we showed off. And of course, you can like link to different parts of where we have information on all this stuff. So updates to docs there. If you're looking for the old docs, you can find that down here. It's kind of hidden on purpose, but we have that domain set up at v0.agent2d.dev. So if you want to compare how we used to do things in the past, you can go back to that link. But everything should be on agent2d.dev now. So obviously we're continuing to make progress with docs, but that's where that lives now. Another update is the Explorer is now live. So you can access that at explorer.agent2d.dev. So it's free to access right now. You can go in and kind of try things out. A few like stylistic changes that we made here is we added some helpful descriptions to each of the demos. So, for example, if you want to learn about vector search, but you're not quite sure what that actually means or how it works under the cover, we give you a nice description of what that means to kind of give you some like just-in-time learning. So in this case, it tells you like what vector search is, and it works by semantic meaning rather than just like matching keywords. So yeah, that's a couple of small updates to Explorer, but there's one thing that I want to show off, which is this new example down here called Evals. Matt talked about it a little bit, but you can actually like try this out on Explorer without having a project, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and generate that. It might take a second, but like Matt mentioned, we have preset and custom evals. So this example is doing kind of the same thing. It's showing an answer completeness preset eval, but then also a custom one that we set up. And so as you can see, it's going to give us a response from GPT-5 Nano about this simple prompt. And then we're going to grab that session ID and then just grab the evals that run on this response after the fact. Right now, we're just storing it in like KV and making an API call to grab that data. But really cool, like how we can do all this with Agent2D and like deploy it on an Agent2D project, which I think is awesome. But as you can see, it's going to show you the eval results. And if you were to like grab the Explorer and like deploy it yourself, you could of course go into the console and see the evals there. So yeah, that's kind of an update on SDK Explorer.
Hey, Parteek.
Mhm.
When are we going to be able to like click sandbox, run in the sandbox, the code?
Yes, yeah, that's the feature coming up next. So this will change from like a copy and like drop into your projects to you can actually run it, which is going to be really awesome. So that's coming next. But yeah, real quick shameless plug. Yeah, real quick shameless plug on the blog. So with all the new stuff that we've added in V1, we do have a new blog post on beta. And it goes through like a bunch of the stuff that we've covered here today. So, if you want it in written form or if your agents need, to know what's new, we have that all in here. So, yeah.
Awesome. I think it looks like Pedro's internet must have gone out or something he dropped here. So we'll probably go ahead and wrap it up. Wow, what a jam-packed week and a couple of weeks. Happy New Year, everyone. We will see you next week.